All right, Ira, my take from our game, and I read what you had to say. I encourage others to do it. I always love your 3-2-1 column on warchant.com, was that Florida State still hasn't put together a complete game, and yet they dominated 66-13. And I think that's something to celebrate, but also watch closely to see if they can become more efficient. But it does speak volumes of how talented this team is, that they could be that kind of herky-jerky and just beat the bejesus out of Southern Miss.
No question, but I think, and that's what's going to be probably fascinating, I think, to watch the rest of the season, is because you're it's kind of like this whole process went on hyperdrive, like and that was kind of why Dirk in the preseason, when we were talking about expectations, I felt weird saying this season will be a disappointment if you don't go to the playoff, because a year ago they were 4-3 at one point, and we were wondering if they were going to finish 500. So it's all kind of happened quickly, but at the same time, this window is pretty tight, where you have a Florida State team that, you have a quarterback in Jordan Travis who you could compete for a national title with, a roster you should be able to compete for a national championship with. And so you want to take advantage of that, but you also don't want to seem ungrateful or unappreciative of having a really good team. So it's a weird place.
It's funny, as I wrote my notes and then I went back and watched the game, I actually watched the game again this morning, and I have all these notes, all these handwritten notes, and I want to kind of try to organize them. And I'm reading over my notes going, man, this is awfully negative. Are you about to go on the air after a 66-13 win and tell everybody we stunk? And you can't do it, but we do owe it to provide context. Like, I think judged against the standard, which is now, as you just described, a team that could win a national title, well, they got to be better. And I think Mike alluded to it. You could tell he didn't want to poo-poo a 66-13 win, and they accomplished a lot of things. They got a ton of guys, a lot of playing time, which is cool. But you can tell he's a little frustrated by those inefficiencies.
Yeah, but, and again, I think you get down to, as a coach, I think you have to look at it, okay, is this lack of effort, or is it lack of, is it just early in the season? Is it attention to detail? Is it a team that's coming off of an emotional win last week?
Right.
So I think, if you're looking for reasons why you might not be totally sharp, there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't have been totally sharp in that game. So if I'm a coaching staff, I'm not overreacting to it. As fans and media, we have to have something to talk about it. So I get it. But I think what they do over these next 2 weeks will be a real indication of what this team is. You get an ACC game this week, but it's a very winnable ACC game at Boston College. And then you got the big game against Clemson, and then you have a bye week. So I think, to me, I wouldn't overreact to a whole lot until we see that Clemson game these next 2 weeks. We'll have 4 games to really look at, and there'll be a bye week to kind of reflect. And I think then we'll have a better picture of what this team is.
I actually can picture ourselves, Ira. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I can see a scenario where they're 4-0 with wins over LSU and Clemson, and we head into the bye week going, man, they just haven't played that well. I seriously, and here's why. Because we're admitting now that it was the tale of two halves against LSU, and that they were kind of inefficient in this game against Southern Miss. And then what if weather is horrific against Boston College, and it's just this ugly get out of Boston 27-7 win or 37-7 type game or something, when they just don't play well because the weather is awful? Like, if it's a windy day and all you can do is run the ball, we won't know. And then let's say Clemson's not very good and they win that game, and we're going to be going, man, they're 4-0. This is a dream start to the season. We're headed to a bye. And yet I feel like we may be talking about how much better they could be. And that wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily.
No, it wouldn't. But I would also remind, anybody that's listening to this, and I think it's something that we see close because we're at practice, but this is a very mature football team. It's a football team with a lot of guys that have been around the block. So I don't think, I think you worry about some of that with an immature team. Okay, they're winning, they're getting good results, but they're not playing well. I could see an immature team is going to get fooled by that. I think a mature team is going to understand. Jeremiah Byers, some of these guys that, Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett, all those guys that have been around football for a long, Ventrell Cypress, been around for a long time. I think they'll appreciate the fact that they can get better, and they will try to get better. If you've got a young team that's just really talented, they may get ahead of themselves and be set up for a big failure. That's why I don't think this team's necessarily primed for that.
By the way, and I didn't talk about it on today's show yet, and I probably should, and I know you probably enjoyed it as well because we've watched the maturation process, and this is another win for Mike and this staff. Jerrion Jones, pick 6, and what he now means to this team and what he is as a player even now that he's healthy. Like, this kind of got overlooked because it's 66-13 and a gazillion people played, and there are a lot of different storylines, but I thought that was one of the cooler moments of the night.
It really was. And, I think when you go back to when he came in with Fabian Lovett, I think a lot of people were more excited about Fabian Lovett coming in. They both came in from Mississippi State. And, Jarring played a lot early, kind of got beat a good bit early. There were a lot of FSU fans who felt like he didn't belong out there. And then he's played through injuries. And but I thought, just over the last, 6 months or a year, we just heard so many good things about what a positive force he is on the team. And then the fact that they've played him at multiple positions. He can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play corner. He's also, been a good teammate. He's a guy that people like. So you saw the reaction when he had that pick 6. You could tell that this team really cares about him. And he's a guy, as you said, he's an example of, like, if you stick it out and you persevere and this coaching staff invests in you, good things are probably going to happen. And I think we're seeing that.
Longest streak back to the other side of the ball in the country for consecutive games of 35 points or more. I know in your 3-2-1, you mentioned that this offense could be on a historic run. Those scores are laid before: 41 against Georgia Tech, 45 against Miami, 38 against Syracuse, 49 against Louisiana, 45 against UF, 35 against Oklahoma, and then the 2 games that we've seen so far this year. It's impressive, very impressive, and they're not even hitting their stride.
No, and that's what I would say is, and even the game that they didn't have 35 last year, the last game they didn't, I think, was Clemson. They had 28. So it's not like it was a big drop off there. And then you look at these 2 games, this season against LSU and
Southern Miss.
Southern Miss, I thought the LSU game, first of all, they may have been going up against the best defensive front they'll see all season. And it took them a while to get going, but then they scored on basically their last 6 possessions. And then in this game, not even playing well, they scored on 12 of 15 possessions. So, yeah, man, I think it's or 9 of 12 possessions, excuse me.
Yeah.
No, I don't see any reason to slow it down. If you think what we thought coming out of last season was this is a very good offense, has a chance to be a great offense. Then they went and added the pieces they had. You started wondering, okay, how good could this be? Well, I think we're starting to get a sense that it could be an all-time great offense.
And all of a sudden, there's a thought that maybe Darian Williamson and perhaps my guy Deuce Spann are going to be a part of the reason why.
For sure. And then you throw in Destin Hill and Winston Wright's getting going again.
Yep.
And it's kind of crazy, man. They have so many weapons on this offense.
I'll save the Johnny Wilson conversation for Seminole headlines tomorrow. We'll have fun with it. Yeah, no, it'll be good. All right, brother, be good. I'll talk to you later. Yep, appreciate it. Ira Schoffel, Warchant.com, every Monday. And actually, I know he's predicting Johnny will be fine. And I said at the beginning of the show that I'll allow wiggle room for that argument because he's proven it time and again. After tough nights,